But what I'd like to do now is welcome Mike Dickey, who is one of the co-founders of JackTrip Labs, one of the people who is responsible for this magic. Please welcome Mike Dickey. Hey, Mike.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here.
Mike, where are you right now?
I'm in my basement in my home in Palo Alto. This is my little home office. I share it with my two kids and my wife. So it's been a fun year of virtual schooling here.
Yeah, it was beautiful when we first were checking this morning the audio. I could hear your kids were actually at virtual school, right, while you were in the office. So I guess during a regular day, you're all in there together working.
Yes, definitely. They were nice enough to leave for this broadcast. But normally it's pretty noisy in here. You can imagine they're chatting, they're screaming, they're doing all their normal things that they do.
It's really beautiful. I have to say, I've got two kids myself, and that's been one of the gifts of the lockdown is just being to spend so much time with them. So, Mike, would you just take a moment and tell us about JackTrip, how long it's been around, when was JackTrip Labs founded, and how did you come to be a part of all of this?
Absolutely. JackTrip's actually been around for a while, over 2 decades, in fact, and it was originally created by the computer music department over at Stanford University, and it's been developed and refined over the years by a great open source community. And I actually didn't even know that JackTrip existed until a year ago. I'm fairly new, to be honest, to this whole game. But the reason that I discovered it was my son is a member of the Ragazzi Boys Chorus, and he was singing earlier in the clip. And I've been a board member of the chorus for the past 2 years. And when we had to shut down all our operations a little over a year ago, it was just really devastating for all the kids. And I could see that. I could see that in my son, and I really wanted to ensure that his love of music continued throughout the pandemic. So I started looking at what things are out there, what technologies could we possibly use. And originally my expectations were extremely low. I thought, anything that could help us collaborate, connect, be more of a group during the pandemic was a great win. And as I looked and I discovered what was possible, what was out there, my expectations gradually grew over time. And I remember sending a message to the Ragazzi board at some point saying, the physics for this really work out. And I went into this long technical description about the speed of light and audio and how the DACs in our computers have evolved over time. And I just got really excited as I started realizing that not only is this is possible, and then I started finding projects that had already been working on this. I mean, being able to collaborate online to perform music together is something that people have wanted to do for a long time, as you can see in the fact that JackTrip is 20 years old. So I looked at what was out there and I started testing things. I started getting various gear and devices and audio hardware, which was super fun for me because although my background's in enterprise software, I've always been an audiophile and I love music. And so being able to play with all the gear has been a big highlight for me. And I discovered the JackTrip project and several others, and I loved a lot of things about JackTrip. One of them is that it's lossless, high-quality audio. It's not compressing the audio. It's actually what you would get sort of recording or producing a CD. And it works really well. It's a very mature project. And it also scaled really well. When I started out, I just wanted to get some boys singing together, and my expectations were low. So I thought, okay, well, if we could just get a small group, if we could just work with a small group, at least that's something that we could provide to connect the boys. But recognizing that introduced all kinds of issues with equity, we really wanted to get everybody singing. And Ragazzi has over 200 boys across all the choruses. So I thought in my mind, well, okay, 200. Can we get 200 boys together to sing? And originally I didn't think it was possible, but I thought at least we could do something. And I started testing, and in my previous, at the time I was working at a company in enterprise software. I was running a performance engineering team there for a while, and it was a big data company, so scaling was a really big thing. We had thousands of servers that we would test the software out with. And so I was pretty knowledgeable on how to do that, and I started testing, and I managed to push it up to 500
Really?
concurrent simulated musicians. Not real people, because we didn't have 500 people, but I was able to simulate the load of having 500. And then I got really excited, because that's when it clicked to me, wow, with this, we could actually get everybody singing. And then the sky was the limit, and I just went to town, and it started out... evenings and weekends as much as I could put to it. We started getting a small group at Ragazzi together. That group became bigger and bigger, and eventually the word about it got out, and more groups were using it and trying it. And I worked with the founder of the JackTrip project, Chris Chafe, at Stanford University, to start the JackTrip Foundation. Originally thinking, we just want to get this available to as many people as possible to help them sing during the pandemic. And we got a lot of interest. It's been a crazy 6+ months working on that, and we've been evolving it as we go. So now I'm working full time on JackTrip Labs, just trying to make this accessible not only to during the pandemic, but just for musicians in general to be able to collaborate online.
It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. You should see the comments right now, just people thanking you, thanking JackTrip, and I think a lot of people have actually used this. One of the questions that we're getting is from Wei Zhang, who is, she's a longtime virtual choir member and supporter, and she's asking, how does increasing the distance affect the latency times? I know that typically I think it's 200 miles or 250 miles, but we even push that to 450 miles for Sing Gently.
Yeah, it's interesting. Ultimately, you're going to be bottlenecked by the speed of light, by the physics involved. But the speed of light's really fast. It's about 300,000 kilometers per second. And if you equate that to the typical threshold for latency to perform music online, they say is about 25 milliseconds. Light can travel about 7,500 kilometers in 25 milliseconds. That's really far. So you can't go from one end of the world to the other end, but you can have a really big radius of musicians possibly performing together. Now, in practicality, the internet, it doesn't reach the true speed of light because it has to bounce through all these paths and switches and everything along the way. But in general, we found that most people have really good success within about 1,000 kilometers of one another, and you can extend that. So if you have largely it depends on your internet connection at your home, and if you have a good fiber internet connection, you can get a lot closer to that theoretical limit. And we've seen it, like people in San Francisco, Los Angeles, Seattle, even down to like Mexico, and people in Texas singing together. So it can be done, but there's all these variables that go into play there.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm convinced that in just even a few years, there will just be, for if you're at the extremes, if we're here in Los Angeles making music with people in Australia, for instance, or in Asia, that will just, if you sit in a symphony orchestra, nobody's really playing at exactly the same time, right? It's a large enough space that you've got to be out ahead of the game or a little bit back. The conductor's usually ahead of everybody kind of works and feels it. And I think probably the software will eventually just become part of a musical language that we use with a little bit of delay here and there.
Absolutely. Like latency is a natural part of our world, and even if you're 10 feet away from a guitarist, there's going to be 10 milliseconds of latency when you hear them. The notes that they play actually reach your ears. So we've all adjusted to that sense of latency in various ways. Obviously, it's bigger for orchestras than it is for a band that's standing next to each other, but certainly, my colleague likes to say it makes our ears. We're learning how to train our ears. Like we start to hear better, we start to adapt better. We've seen that with the groups. Like originally, that first rehearsal was a little difficult. They're like, "Oh, this is a little weird," but after they adjust, it just becomes natural.
Yeah, I was stunned by that, and I think it was especially beautiful to work with children who just, they somehow adopt the new reality so quickly. And that by the time I was working with everybody, it couldn't have been more normalized. Just, this is a rehearsal. It was truly extraordinary to see how quickly all of that became just the way we're doing it now. I mentioned before that everybody was standing in front of their own microphones, but not all the same microphones. And actually, Jan August has a really interesting question, which is, do they use special microphones in order to do this?
Not really. Where to start with microphone technology? So there's USB microphones and there's analog microphones first. So if you have a USB microphone, it's going to have an analog digital chip in it that converts that sound, the sound waves, converting it into the pulses that you can send over a network. And ultimately, that's actually a big bottleneck in general with what we do. Like at some point along the way, you're converting these sound waves into digital, and then you're converting that digital into back into sound waves to hear it. And what's happened over the years is those processors that do that have gotten a lot faster over time. But there's still a range of sort of what they call the latency of those chips. And so some are slower than others. But if you're going through a USB device or a microphone, you're going to go through that conversion, and you're going to have some additional latency involved. If you're using an analog microphone, there's no latency, so it would just go directly into your audio device and be able to go out through there. So the prototype devices that we built for Ragazzi and other choruses, they have a built-in chips in them that's very low. It's under 2 milliseconds, and that allows you to keep things very optimized below that 25 millisecond threshold, even with fairly standard internet connections. But those devices, one of the challenges we've had is that they take line level input, and so if you have a microphone that doesn't generate a strong enough signal, then it can be hard to hear that inside of going through that conversion. But you can hook them up to external microphone preamps. You can hook them up to external mixing devices, in which case it gives the microphones that extra boost. Even really nice condenser microphones that require phantom power can work that way.
Yeah, it seems like a natural evolution that there will be a microphone that is designed for this very use, right? That this lowest latency possible microphone. So a lot of people here in the chat are asking, by the way, if you have any questions for either myself or Mike Dickey, please post them in the comment section right now. But not only am I seeing them here, but when we sent out the emailing about this, we got a bunch of comments back. People who are not only using JackTrip, but are using Jamulus. And how does Jamulus interact with JackTrip? How does that whole ecosystem work?
Yeah, there are really two different open source projects originally, and both predate the pandemic. Both have been used by lots of people before it. The key differences technically are that Jamulus uses a codec to compress audio, so you don't get that full fidelity CD quality audio, and it also only scales to groups of about 50 people that I've seen at most, and if you have a larger group, it's just not going to be able to handle all those people on at the same time. Now, we think both are awesome projects, are great platforms, and so we built Virtual Studio in such a way that when you create a room, when you create a studio room to connect to, you can use either one. You can use JackTrip or you can use Jamulus. You can even have some people on JackTrip and other people on Jamulus, and they'll hear each other. They can sing and play together. So what we're trying to do is to unite these two worlds or projects, make it easy regardless of which platform works best for you.
So beautiful, Mike. So what's the future? What are you hoping for the way this all rolls out then?
Ultimately, we want more people to be making more music. We just want to make it easier for people to do that. We think music is a wonderful thing. It's a unifying factor that unites cultures, that breaks down walls. And there's barriers, like just everything. Having to drive to somebody's house and take your drum kit and your instruments and everything is a barrier. It might not be a huge barrier. It's certainly not as big of a barrier as the pandemic was, where you might like get sick and die from it. But it's still enough that people don't do it as frequently as they probably would like to do it. Yeah. And with a lot similar to a lot of things with the internet, we think that it can help lower that barrier. It can make it easy for anybody to connect together and play music together and not have to to do as much work to get there. And our hope is that will, it could just be something where you augment your rehearsal once a week. You're virtual, and the other day on the week you do it in person. So maybe you're rehearsing more, or maybe you're just playing together more, or maybe it's just an evening, and you had a long day. You don't feel like trying to arrange to get together, but you still want to play. Like maybe you can find other musicians you haven't even known or played with before, and that could be a whole new experience of connecting and being able to just easily start playing music with people. And ultimately that's where I would love to see it going. It's just to help make it easy for anybody to play music. Interestingly, my story. I played bass guitar and saxophone in marching band in high school, and then I started my career in software, and I've done well, but it's taken a lot of time, and I've kind of made a sacrifice at some point of not doing as much music as I'd like. I listen to music all the time, but I haven't played very much in 20 years. But interestingly, with this, not only is it connecting me more to the music world, but it's made it easier for me. I recently bought a new bass guitar. I started relearning how to play, and I started playing a lot more. And
nice.
And I think there's probably a lot of people out there that would love to have a closer connection to music if we could lower that barrier, that are like myself.
No question. So, Mike, we're getting a ton of questions, people asking technical questions, and also how can they use this? If there's a conductor or a singer who want to do all of this, where can they go to get more information?
Yeah, the best resource is our website at JackTrip.org. And we have a landing page, jacktrip.org/Eric Whitacre, that you can go to get information about this performance. And also there is a form to sign up for our mailing list, so that you can get more information about what we're doing, what we're working on. And there's also checkboxes in that form, so I'd encourage people to look at those. One is to express interest that I'm someone who wants to host an event like this, and the other is I'm someone who wants to participate in an event like this. And in the future, we'll be looking at that and trying to use it to help connect people together and put together more events that are like this.
Amazing. Mike, thank you so much for all the work that you've done. On behalf of musicians around the world, it's just a gift. The work you're doing is an absolute gift.
My pleasure. It's been a gift to me to work on this and to help everybody and to see the impact that it's had.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks. Be well.
Thank you.